From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
The political fallout from the FBI search of Donald Trump's home in Mar-a-Lago continues, and Donald Trump takes the fifth in 4 hours of testimony in front of the New York State Attorney General. Can Trump really be disqualified from running again for office if he's convicted of breaking a public records law? Plus, do Democrats want to disqualify Trump from running again or keep him around to keep running against him time and again and again and again? We'll try to answer those questions. Welcome. I'm Paul Gigot with the Wall Street Journal opinion pages, and I'm here with two of my colleagues, Kim Strassel and Kyle Peterson. Welcome to you both. 3 days after the raid, Kim, what do you think we've learned since the raid that fills out our understanding of what happened and why, and what the Justice Department was looking for?
Well, we haven't heard anything from the Justice Department. I think that that's notable. There has been some calls by Republicans for Attorney General Merrick Garland to issue some sort of statement, explain what's going on. So far, both the Department of Justice and FBI have refused to do that. That being said, the Trump team, in particular his lawyers, have been providing information to the press, at least from their perspective, about how all this shook out. It sounds as though there had been ongoing efforts since Trump left office for the government to reattain some documents that he has. At least according to the Trump team, in June, they actually came down, the Department of Justice, and looked through some last documents and requested that a certain storage locker have a better lock on it. According to the Trump team, that's really the last they heard from him, and then bingo, this raid. Now, again, that's one side of the story. Their argument is that they were cooperating with the FBI and the Department of Justice in this ongoing question of what needed to be returned, and that they were taken aback and surprised by this raid. Whatever it is, we do seem to have a better idea, unless something huge is missing here, that this seems to be a fight over some sort of missing documents or classified material.
And I guess it's complicated, Kyle, by the fact that we now have the news reports that there is supposedly what is described as a mole inside the Trump political operation, and that helped the FBI here, at least in a story in our paper, and I think one in Newsweek, suggests even that person may have led the FBI to the exact place where the documents were held inside Mar-a-Lago. Now, that story has not been confirmed or reported, at least as confirmation by other publications, so you can take that with a grain of salt, but that has been reported, and certainly this will increase the anxiety in Trump land that somehow the FBI knows something that they're not sure what it is.
But it would seem to explain, if that's true, part of the story here, because we know that there were some documents that Trump took from the White House that he has already returned to the National Archives. And part of the dispute here seems to be about what more he has and whether he denied having more or denied having these documents that the FBI was interested in. So it would explain a whole lot if there was somebody within the Trump organization who was telling the FBI on the side, yeah, you know, there are some boxes here that have some material in them. It looks like some of it might be classified. Here's where they are. That would explain why the FBI seemed so confident in going in to do this raid. It also seems to have done that while President Trump was up here in New York, New Jersey area in order to not turn it into a big spectacle. But to my mind, the huge question remains, what is allegedly in these boxes that would justify this kind of an action by the Justice Department and the FBI? It would have to be, I think, a pretty big, pretty serious classified information, national security information, not to just continue on with trying to get it from him, trying to subpoena him, and move forward that way without creating this kind of a raid.
Let's listen to Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley, a Republican, on the Mar-a-Lago raid and the Justice Department.
This is a Department of Justice supposed to be, but it's a Department of Trust Us. And that isn't the way the American government works. transparency, brings accountability, and this extraordinary action on this administration, whether it's Biden, whether it's Garland, or whether it's Ray, or whether it's somebody under them that Ray didn't even know about it. I didn't even get an answer on that. But we need to have trust in the Department of FBI, and this just destroys that confidence.
Kim, you gotta love Chuck Grassley. He's quite a character. But, he makes a serious point, which is the one that Kyle was getting at, which is if this is really about documents, okay, and not a larger fishing expedition about January 6th or something else, if this is really a fight over documents, what kind of documents? And is it so serious that it required this kind of extraordinary action with all of its political fallout, all of its potential to set terrible precedents, and all of its political ramifications, including that it will look like to literally tens of millions of Republicans as a case of unequal justice and a political law enforcement against a political opponent who could run against this president again in 2024.
Right. I mean, the Department of Justice has guidelines that address this very situation because there's a fine line. You hear a lot of Democrats saying, well, no one is above the law. I agree with that. However, you can't simply erase the fact that this is, as you note, a prominent political figure who also happens to reside in the opposing party from the one that is now in power. And the Department of Justice has always recognized the risk of coming across or taking actions that would allow the public to perceive it as a partisan operation, partisan law enforcement, in which the party in power is using its powers of law enforcement to abuse, harass, or in some way undercut opposing political members. And so they have these guidelines that say you have to treat these things with real sensitivity. And that gets to your and Kyle's point, which is really you choose for the first time in the history of all of the Department of Justice to go raid the house of a former president over documents, especially, by the way, documents were 18 months beyond since when Trump left. He retains top security clearance. There doesn't seem to be any evidence that these documents that were in question, if this is really what's going on, were in somehow imminent threat of being disposed of or destroyed. So why now and why all guns drawn when it seems as though, as well, too, there were any other number of methods that could have been taken to get to the same place, whether subpoenas or continued negotiations that would have solved this in a way that didn't cause all these headlines.
On that point, Kyle, I'm struck reading the coverage in the what I would call the Democratic media complex, which is nearly all of the media. The lack of any reflection that this is dangerous territory that Merrick Garland has moved into. They're circling the wagons around him. Not long ago, he was a timid establishmentarian who was not doing enough to pursue Donald Trump. Suddenly, he's Elliot Ness taking down Al Capone. I'm serious. If you read you kind of read between the lines. I mean, Ruth Marcus, who's kind of got perfect Beltway Democratic pitch on legal issues, the Washington Post described him as, he's a straight shooter. He's upright. And I have nothing against Merrick Garland. I supported his nomination. I thought he was a good choice for Attorney General, especially given the other choices that were floated. But, it's a question of not just his legal judgment here, but his political judgment. And the Attorney General is a legal job. People say, oh, well, justice should never be political. But when it comes to prosecuting a political appointee, a political opponent, particularly a former president, it's inherently political, right? You have to take that into consideration when you are making judgments about what laws to enforce, how to enforce them, and how to go about enforcing them. And I wish that there were more reflection by the Democratic media complex about the fact that they go down this road. It's going to rebound at some point against them. It will inevitably do that. That's what happened with the independent counsel statute that pursued Richard Nixon and Republicans until it was used against Bill Clinton. And suddenly, Democrats weren't so enthusiastic about it. I think once you break the norm of prosecuting a president, if that's where this goes, and remember, this was a law enforcement action against a former president. Once you do that and break that norm, I guarantee you this will not be the last time, Kyle.
Right. And I also think they've not really reckoned with the idea that if they bring a charge or pursue a route that is not supported by really ironclad evidence, I think what they will do is they will strengthen President Trump as he is considering a run in 2024. We are already seeing a lot of that in the absence of any real information about what was in these boxes, people coming to Trump's defense. And I think what may end up happening here, let's say they bring a charge for mishandling documents. Trump comes in, he makes his defense because we don't have any of that right now. Maybe he says he didn't know what was in there. Somebody else brought him down. It was good faith. I don't know what the defense would be, but you really only need one juror on a jury to acquit. And then President Trump is going to claim vindication. And what I think will end up happening is there are a lot of people in the Republican Party who are ready to move on from President Trump, who are ready to move on from relitigating the 2020 election. But if they start to get the sense toward these midterms or toward 2024 that there is unequal justice going on, retributive justice going on, they may decide that the only way to stop that is to support Republican candidates, support President Trump again in 2024, and they may pave the way for him right back to the Oval Office.